South Korea just broke a 122-year-old record, but not the kind you want to break. Meanwhile, Trump is negotiating instead of bombing Iran, and Spain's borders just saw chaos like never before. Buckle up because these stories are going to be intense and a little surprising, and they're happening right now. I'm Corey, your personal English tutor here on YouTube, and I want to help you improve your English while learning about what's actually happening in Korea and around the world. This is listening time. Let's just listen and follow along with these stories. Our first story is about South Korea breaking an all-time heat record. South Korea just registered its highest temperature since records began more than a century ago. The southeastern city of Yangsan saw the temperature reach 42.5 degrees Celsius on Sunday at 1:26 p.m. This breaks the previous record and marks the hottest day in Korean history. Yangsan has been the center of the continuing heat wave. Temperatures exceeded 40 degrees Celsius for 5 consecutive days. Many other cities, including Daegu and Busan, are also experiencing extreme heat, with temperatures in the high 30s. More than 20 cities are under emergency heat alerts. This is a new warning level introduced this year. We reported on it on a previous edition. An emergency alert is issued when an area experiences dangerous heat conditions. At least 13 people have died from heat-related illness so far. The Korea Meteorological Administration warned people to avoid outdoor activities between noon and 5 p.m. The government told people to check on elderly neighbors living alone. Power disruptions are also a concern as demand for air conditioning increases. Scientists say extreme weather events like heat waves are becoming more frequent and intense because of climate change. This heat wave is expected to continue for several more days. The government has set up cooling centers in public buildings where people can go to escape the heat. How did you do? What is the main problem in this story? Why is the Korean government worried? And to put it simply, think about, and you can tell me in the comments, what is this article about? Try to make it as simple a sentence as possible. Good. Let's move to our second story. Trump cancels Iran strikes, negotiations to resume. President Trump announced on Saturday that he called off a planned military attack on Iran. The United States and Israel had been planning what would be one of the largest bombing campaigns against Iran. However, Trump said he agreed to suspend the operation after requests from Middle Eastern countries. Trump said negotiations with Iran will begin on Monday. He said the proposed agreement would include the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping route in the Middle East we've talked about a lot this year. He also said the agreement would address Iran's nuclear program. Iran's defense minister said on social media that the country was neither surprised nor passive and remains alert. A regional official involved in talks said the proposal calls for the U.S. and Iran to return to negotiations. Saudi Arabia and other Gulf nations asked Trump to call off the attacks because they believed a deal is possible. Trump said when allies asked him to stop the attacks, he agreed to talks instead. He said there could be a deal on the opening of the Strait of Hormuz and then a deal on Iran's nuclear program. The situation between the U.S. and Iran has been tense for months now. Military strikes had already occurred in July. Now both sides are trying to negotiate instead of continuing military action. Could be hope for the future, we'll see. So, here's the question. How did the US-Iran situation change? Think about it. You can pause the video and formulate your thoughts. What is Trump doing now instead of attacking? Now try to tell me, or write in the comments, or take a note, what is this article about? Make it as simple as you can. All right, if we're ready, let's move to story 3. A record number of migrants entering Spain from Morocco. Around 60,000 migrants crossed into Spain's North African territory of Ceuta in late July. This is a record number of arrivals in such a short period. Most of the migrants were young men from Morocco who swam around border barriers or climbed over border fences. At least 67 people died during the crossing. Some drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. Others were killed in a stampede as crowds pushed to cross a breakwater barrier. The situation was chaotic and local authorities were overwhelmed. Social media posts had encouraged Moroccans to attempt the crossing. Posts included information about how to cross the border and what to say to authorities. Some people say human traffickers spread rumors about a recent Spanish court ruling that might allow migrants to stay. By Friday, Spanish officials said most of the migrants had returned to Morocco. Many left voluntarily after realizing there was no food, shelter, or jobs waiting for them in Ceuta. Spanish soldiers helped manage the border and assisted with returns to Morocco. Spain announced it will install a 500-meter-long barrier on the sea border between Ceuta and Morocco. The Spanish Prime Minister visited Ceuta to assess the situation. Spanish politicians said they will restore order and prevent future mass crossings. So, what happened in Ceuta and why did the situation end the way it did? Now try to tell me as simple as possible in the comments, what was the article about? All right, when you're ready, we're going to move on. So take a moment, think about what you heard, which story surprised you, what was interesting about these stories, and which one do you want to understand better? If you go back, the ones that were difficult, re-listen to those stories, or we're about to go a little bit deeper. We're going to read each story again, but this time I will explain the sentences and difficult words and phrases. After you listen to this part, you can return back to the listening and see if you understand more, okay? So, this will help you understand better and learn new vocabulary. And if you're enjoying this digestible news, please like and subscribe. It helps other people that are trying to learn English find this channel as well. All right, here we go. This will be story 1, where I'll explain in detail what everything means. Ready? South Korea breaks an all-time heat record. This is the title of our article. South Korea registered its highest temperature since records began more than a century ago. Registered means to officially record, to write down on paper. So, South Korea's highest official temperature, the one written down, measurement in over 100 years of keeping the record. So, since they started writing down, we got the highest ever. The southeastern city of Yangsan saw the temperature reach 42.5 degrees Celsius on Sunday at 1:26 p.m. This breaks the previous record and marks the hottest day in Korean history. Make sense? Yangsan has been the center of a continuing heat wave. Heat wave is a period of extremely hot weather. It continues for many days. Very hot weather for many days. Temperatures exceeded 40 degrees Celsius for 5 consecutive days. Exceeded means went higher. So here's 40, it went above. And consecutive means one after another, back to back. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like that. That is consecutive. Many other cities, including Daegu and Busan, were also experiencing extreme heat with temperatures in the high 30s. They also had very high heat. Not as high as Yangsan, but still very high. More than 20 cities are under emergency alerts. This emergency alert is a new warning level introduced this year. An emergency alert is issued when an area experiences or has dangerous, meaning very high and not healthy, heat conditions. At least 13 people have died from heat-related illnesses so far, meaning they had heat stroke or they got too hot and fainted, or they have another condition like a heart problem and the heat made their heart worse. These are heat-related conditions. So 13 people have died or passed away. The Korea Meteorological Administration, this is the weather team, the Korean government weather team, warned people to avoid outdoor activities between noon and 5 p.m. Don't go outside between noon, 12, and 5 p.m. The government told people to check on elderly neighbors living alone. So go find neighbors who are old and check on them. Make sure they are okay. Power disruptions are also a concern as demand for air conditioning increases. Disruption means to stop having service. So power disruption means their power goes away. So power going away people are worried about it because many people are using air conditioning at the same time. So you have the air conditioning on, there's too much power needed, so the power can shut off. Okay? Scientists say extreme weather events like heat waves are becoming more frequent and intense because of climate change. Scientists say hot weather like this will be longer, more often, and higher because climate change. This heat wave is expected to continue for several more days. The government is setting up cooling centers in public buildings where people can go to escape the heat. So public facilities like arenas or in like the subway, they will have cooling centers. There was cooling centers at the Olympic Park a few days ago, last weekend when I went there, where you can escape the heat, where you can find a cool place and get away, push the heat away. All right? Understand? Now, if you'd like, you can stop here and go back to the listening and try to listen again and see if you understand it more clearly. If you're ready, let's move to the second story. Trump canceling the Iran strikes, negotiations to resume. President Trump announced on Saturday that he called off a planned military attack on Iran. Announced means he told the public, he told everybody. The called off means he canceled. It is canceled, it is no longer going to happen. So Trump publicly said he was canceling a planned attack. The United States and Israel had been planning what would be one of the largest bombing campaigns against Iran. So before that announcement, the plan was we will do a the biggest bombing attack. The bombing campaign is a bombing plan. So the plan was biggest bombing plan, but after the announcement, he decided to cancel the campaign. However, Trump said he agreed to suspend the operation after requests from Middle Eastern countries. Suspend meaning temporarily, for a short time. For a short time, he will stop the attack. So the attack is paused, not permanently canceled. So it is canceled for a short time, just paused. After Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia or Iraq or other countries, they asked, please don't do the attack. He said the proposed agreement, Trump said negotiations with Iran will begin on Monday. He said the proposed agreement would include the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which means the agreement that he is showing Iran would also have the opening of the Strait of Hormuz right now, immediately, which is, of course, the critical shipping route in the Middle East. It's between Iran and Oman, and it carries most of the world's oil, as you know. And critical, of course, means very, very, very important. He also said the agreement would address Iran's nuclear program. This address is not like where you live. This address means to talk about. So he also said the agreement would be about Iran's nuclear program. That's the same meaning. He also said the agreement would talk about Iran's nuclear program. Same meaning. Iran's defense minister said on social media that the country was neither surprised nor passive and remains alert. This is a difficult sentence. It means the defense leader went to social media, like Twitter, and then said the country, Iran, is not surprised, or they are not also passive. This means they're not surprised because of Trump's words, and they are not waiting for a reaction. They are preparing for everything, an attack or conversation. And they are remaining alert, meaning they are keeping their eyes open and waiting for some action. That is the meaning of this sentence. A regional official involved in talks said the proposal calls for the US and Iran to return to negotiations. This means an official, a government worker in Iran, involved with talking between Iran and the United States. This person said that the agreement says the US and Iran will return to negotiations. They will continue to talk. Saudi Arabia and other Gulf nations asked Trump to call off the attacks because they believe a deal is possible. Called off means cancel. Suspend means cancel for a short time. So they asked for him to call off or cancel the attacks. But he said they are just suspended. Like, we'll wait and see. Trump said when allies asked him to stop the attacks, he agreed to talks instead. He said there could be a deal on opening the Strait of Hormuz and then a deal on Iran's nuclear program. So he's saying first, Strait of Hormuz, second, nuclear program. We'll do it one by one. The situation between the US and Iran has been tense for months. Tense means full of tension or tight or a little bit too alert, right? So it becomes difficult and stressful. So, yeah, very difficult. Military strikes had already occurred in July. They already happened. In July, they kept fighting despite ceasefires. Now, both sides are trying to negotiate instead of continuing military action. So now they are trying to talk to each other instead of shooting each other. That's good. So, how did you do? Go back now and you can listen to the second story in the listening section. Check the chapters. Listen again. See if you understand better. All right? When you're ready, come back to story 3 and I'll explain. Good to go? Record number of migrants enter Spain from Morocco. Around 60,000 migrants crossed into Spain's North African territory of Ceuta in late July. Ceuta is a small Spanish territory. It's in North Africa, but it is part of Spain, though Morocco also says it is not. So there is some argument about it. It's a strategic border location, and there is some, it's very controversial location. However, migrants are people who go from one location to another to live in another location. If they get into the country and become officially part of the country, they're immigrants. Also, they immigrate to another country or migrate to another country. Migrate is about the movement, and immigrate is about the official records, this kind of thing. All right. This is a record number of arrivals in such a short period. There's never been this many people in such a short amount of time. Most of the migrants were young men from Morocco who swam around border barriers or climbed over border fences. This means most of the people were young men. They swam around in the ocean to Ceuta, and they got around borders, barriers in the ocean, and they went over fences on the borders. So it was kind of difficult because 67 people died during the crossing. It's a really high number. Some drowned in the Mediterranean Sea, the sea, of course, in southern Europe. Others were killed in a stampede as crowds pushed to cross a breakwater. Stampede means a wild rush of people. Usually it's animals. So when a lot of animals run, they are stampeding. When people stampede, it's like, it feels like animals because there's so many. As they hit a breakwater. Breakwater is a barrier that protects the coast. So it stops major waves from destroying the coast. So the people died in the chaos when crowds rushed to cross the border barrier. So as they were pushing, some of them, there was too many people and they got crushed by being walked on or knocked into the water or something. The situation was chaotic and local authorities were overwhelmed. Chaotic meaning a little bit wild, like not controllable. And local authorities, local officials, police, judges, this kind of people, they were overwhelmed. They could not deal with it. It's too much stuff. Social media posts had encouraged Moroccans to attempt the crossing. Encouraged meaning promoted or urged people to do something. Posts on social media urged people, asked people, told them, oh, it's a good idea. You should try crossing the border. Posts included information about how to cross the border and what to say to authorities. So how do you get across and what do you say to police, to the border guard, everything. Sure. And human traffickers spread rumors about a recent Spanish court ruling that might allow migrants to stay. So there's a rumor that human traffickers, people who sell other people, told people that in Spain there is a new law. This law will let you stay in Spain legally. That's the idea. By Friday, Spanish officials said most of the migrants had returned to Morocco. This means on Friday, Spanish authorities, police, or the government said the people who came from Morocco, most of them were back in Morocco. Many left voluntarily after realizing there was no food, shelter, or jobs waiting for them in Ceuta. Voluntarily means by choice. They chose to leave. They chose to leave because they realized Quetta had nothing to offer them. There was no food, there was no jobs, there was nothing. They were lied to. Spanish soldiers helped manage the borders and assisted with returns to Morocco. They just watched the border and helped the people. Spain announced it will install a 500-meter-long barrier on the sea border between Quetta and Morocco. So it'll be a big sea border, bigger than the previous one. The Spanish Prime Minister visited Quetta to assess the situation. He wanted to check on the situation with his own eyes. Spanish politicians said they will restore order and prevent future mass crossings. Restore order means to bring control back. They will make it a more controlled environment and peace. There will be peace there after all the chaos. And to prevent future mass crossings means to stop or find some method to keep mass crossings from happening. Some crossings they can handle, but mass crossings is too much. That's the meaning. How did you do? You can go back and check on story 3 in the listening and see if you understand it more clearly when it's just spoken. As another little advice, if you keep track of the vocabulary or words or expressions that are new to you, and then review them tomorrow and the next day, they will stick more frequently. And on this channel, I reuse expressions on purpose, so you'll hear them naturally, often. That way, you'll get it in your mind more easily over a long-term period. All right, now we have a special segment where I like to talk about what happened this week in history. It's an interesting section. I hope you also enjoy it. On August 2nd in 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait 36 years ago. Iraq forces invaded and occupied the small nation of Kuwait. Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein ordered thousands of troops to cross the border early in the morning. The invasion shocked the world and led to an international crisis. Kuwait is a small oil-rich nation, if you didn't know, on the coast of the Persian Gulf. Iraq is its larger neighbor to the north. Hussein claimed that Kuwait belonged to Iraq and should be part of Iraqi territory. Kuwait had been independent since 1961. The invasion had serious consequences, as many of you know. The United Nations condemned the actions. Many countries around the world were angry and worried. The price of oil increased sharply because Kuwait was a major oil producer. Many nations feared that Hussein might also invade Saudi Arabia, which is another important oil nation. The United Nations led an international military response. A coalition of countries, including European nations and Arab countries, formed to oppose Iraq. After months of diplomatic efforts, military action began in January 1991. The conflict lasted several weeks. Kuwait was liberated, but the war caused significant loss of life and damage. My father was here during that time. This historical event shows how one nation's actions can affect many countries. It also demonstrates the importance of international cooperation and the role of the United Nations in global conflicts, and is a personal one for me. So yeah, very interesting. All right, as for our big question for today, which you'll find in the PDF, how do you think the extreme heat in South Korea and the rest of the world is not just affecting you and your local neighborhood, but international things as well? Do you think some events like the war or other events around the world are being affected by the heat? And how do you think they're being affected by the heat? Tell me in the comments down below. I'm very interested. All right, thank you so much for watching Digestible News. You did a great job today following along. As always, I want to encourage you as much as possible as your personal English teacher here on YouTube. If you did not understand some words or phrases, you can review the vocabulary sections. You can find those in the newspaper PDF in the comments down below. Listen to the podcast while reading the PDF is also a good way to study. Leave a comment. Tell me which story interested you the most. Also, this is a new format taken from the advanced video. I thought I would try it with you digestible news listeners. If you liked it, please let me know. And also, if you'd like to join this channel, you can click the join button down below. Become part of digestible news community. There will be members-only content in the near future. I hope to get that to you guys soon, as well as live streams and other things as the channel continues to evolve. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, an interesting day. Interesting days are more, well, interesting and fun. Just keep studying hard, stay informed, but above all, remember to stay curious. Bye for now.